Liz Truss has insisted that she will lead the Tories into the next general election in 2024, despite numerous U-turns, leaving her position this very morning looking incredibly vulnerable.
There are plots to replace her underway inside the party, according to reports. Let's speak to one of her ministers, the Armed Forces Minister, James Heappey. Look, good morning to you, Mr Heappey, and it is good to speak to you this morning. I don't know where to start, frankly. Yesterday, just describe to us what it was like for you as a member of her government to see her new Chancellor stand up in the House of Commons and dismantle Trussonomics piece by piece, reversing practically everything, including the energy price guarantee, which is always her fallback answer, in front of her eyes. What was that like?
Well, Susanna, you asked my personal feeling. I am a pragmatist. I'm not an ideologue. And I think that there was no other option, given that the mini-budget, alongside a lot of sort of global economic pressures, had caused the market reaction in the UK that it had. It had driven up the cost of UK government borrowing to such a point that the plans were unaffordable, and the impact on the gilts market and thus the pensions funds was unsustainable. So the pragmatist in me that wants to see a government governing in the best interests of the United Kingdom was relieved to see the Prime Minister have rowed back from the original mini-budget, appoint a Chancellor that got what needed to be done, and in whom the markets clearly have confidence.
But, Mr Heappey, it wasn't the Prime Minister who rowed back from that, was it? I mean, it was the Prime Minister who introduced it. It was the Prime Minister who then threw her Chancellor under a bus and blamed it all on him. It was the Prime Minister who didn't know what to do, so the Chancellor had to stand up. I mean, apart from anything else, why wasn't the Prime Minister there from the start yesterday? And why wasn't it the Prime Minister standing up in the House of Commons explaining what needed to be done?
Well, there's a couple of things. I mean, I think it can be both true that the Prime Minister was responsible for the initial set of policies. She very clearly campaigned on those policies during the leadership election. But so too can it be true that the Prime Minister chose to row away from them when it became clear that the economic circumstances did not allow those to go ahead. As for where the Prime Minister was yesterday, I mean, there are lots of things that the Prime Minister must attend to, some of which, unfortunately, because Parliament is a very important responsibility to all of us as ministers, but sometimes it is necessary to be elsewhere. Now, I don't know exactly where she was, and so I'm not going to speculate.
She was seeing the chairman of the 1922 committee. She was talking to the chairman of the 1922 committee. Surely you know that. That's public knowledge now.
Richard, I genuinely didn't, but I have nothing to say that you're wrong. So if that's the case, then...
But listen, you say that you're a pragmatist, and you clearly are from the answers you're giving. Surely the political pragmatist in you can see that the game's up, that the look is terrible. As a journalist, I've never seen anything like it in my entire career. It just looks dreadful. You've got Tory newspapers describing her as a ghost and openly basically telling her to go. She can't hang on, can she?
Well, Richard, it may well indeed be as you describe, but alternatively, to go through a period where the Conservative Party goes into an enormous convulsion and seeks to choose another leader is equally, I think, self-indulgent, and the public would have no truck with it. There is such rancour, I think, within our party that the idea that anybody could unify behind anybody else is simply for the birds.
You don't think picking a new leader would be the lesser of two evils? Because the evil you've got at the moment is a leader of this country, our Prime Minister, whether you voted for the Conservatives or not, who just looks like a broken egg.
No, I don't. I really don't accept that. I think that there is no doubt about it, that this is not the start to a premiership that Liz Truss would have wanted. But it does take some courage and a lot of leadership to recognise when your plans need to change. And in politics, changing your plans quickly and owning your mistake is very important. It's something that not enough politicians do. And in fact, you have spent many an interview trying to extract from politicians their admission of guilt and an apology, and the fact that the Prime Minister has done that quickly is to her credit. There are lots of things going on right now, domestic policy, things that will unlock our productivity, unlock investment in our regions. Internationally, there is a lot of diplomacy required to curate the international response to Putin's nuclear saber rattling and to keep our support for Ukraine resolute. Those are things that the Prime Minister is engaged in and engaged in well. Nobody's pretending.
Mr. Heappey, internationally, she's being compared to a lettuce. The Economist said she has the shelf life of a lettuce, and the Washington Post is running headlines asking why the UK Prime Minister is being compared to a lettuce. This is humiliating on the international stage. The American president has criticised our economic policy. Look, let me just take it down to basics. The Prime Minister, Liz Truss, any question you asked her over the last couple of weeks, she would answer with, we have introduced an energy price guarantee, which means that people will not see their bills soaring to £6,000. The average will be capped at 2,500. Now, there is no cap at 2,500, by the way, but that energy price guarantee is now withdrawn and people will see their bills soar to around £5,000 next spring. She can't stick to anything, can she?
Well, Susanna, that's an important distinction that you made at the end there, because I was worried I was going to need to correct you. The intervention that has been made to cap the price per kilowatt hour or therm for electricity and gas this winter still stands. So your viewers can have confidence, as all summer you were rightly championing their concerns on your show because they were worried about how they would get through the winter. The intervention that the government made on energy bills for this winter still stands. Now, what the Chancellor said was that a 2-year intervention with a guaranteed cap per kilowatt hour per therm was something that needed to be reviewed, because nobody knows what energy prices will do next winter. Next summer, when energy usage drops off, prices normally drop away as well. And next winter, who knows where the geopolitical situation will be in Europe? Who knows how successfully the diversification of energy supplies will have gone?
Nobody can trust anything now that the government says, because we have seen a U-turn on pretty much everything. I want to ask you, because you served in Afghanistan, you served in Iraq, you are a veteran of our armed forces. Would you trust someone like this leading you into battle?
Yes. I mean, I have been in situations many times in my career where the people leading me have made mistakes, and what maintains your confidence in them is their ability to recognize when a mistake has been made and to own it. What erodes your confidence is when they can't see that they've made a mistake or they refuse to own it. So nobody is pretending that this isn't the start, that this is the start to Liz Truss's premiership that she would have wanted. It clearly isn't. She admits that she went too far and too fast. But I still have confidence in her. I think that what the parliamentary party must do is row in behind her. That's not out of blind obedience. I think the government has a job of work to do to bring the parliamentary party back together.
Well, you say you have confidence. I'm so sorry to interrupt. It's difficult, isn't it, on these links? But I'm trying not to. But just very quickly, you say you have confidence in her. Here's a theoretical situation which is not that far from not being fantasy. Let's say I said to you right now, I'm just getting breaking news in my earpiece, Mr. Heappey, that actually the Prime Minister has stood down. She's resigned. What would your immediate emotional response be? Relief or disappointment?
Richard, there is absolutely no... I can see straight away how your social media team would clip that up. There's no way I'm indulging that speculation.
Well, if we were sitting together on a train with no microphones, I would ask you that question, and I know you'd give me an answer, and I think I can suspect what it is, but OK, that's
No, I honestly, actually, Richard, in all honesty,
yes.
I don't think you do know the answer I would give you, because I just think that there's the sort of pantomime of politics that is played out in the media, and then there's the reality of what politics means to people across the length and breadth of this country. And I don't think for a second that entering into another change of leader would change anything in terms of the dynamic in the Parliamentary Conservative Party. There is deep discord that needs to be resolved one way or the other. And actually, we have got a leader. We have got a prime minister. What we need to do is understand our differences within the parliamentary party, come together and back her, and then be judged by the electorate at the next general election. Well, I genuinely cannot see any advantage whatsoever in changing the leader.
Well, thank you very much for coming on live. One of your colleagues yesterday, who was meant to be doing these rounds of interviews, pulled because obviously things were so unstable, and they still are unstable. But at least you had the guts to come on and take some questions, and we appreciate that.